survived another one. Russ Gibb jumping up and down. My guest today is a guy who is the ultimate optimist. He thinks he's going to be vice president of the United States. He's from the Libertarian Party. Did I see that camera wiggle there? Or was that my imagination? I gotta get new bifocals. Oh, it's the bifocals. Anyway, Mr. Andre Marrou, is the Libertarian candidate for the position of vice president of the United States. Now, how about that? You don't think it's have you ever heard what they have to say? They have a very interesting philosophy, and strangely enough, more people are talking libertarian, but they don't know that they're talking libertarian. You know, we think of Democrats and Republicans. Watch out. Someday, when enough people get fed up with what's going on, these guys might really have a crack at it. I don't know if it's yet, but we'll see. Oh, by the way, you know, the whole thing is capitalism here. I don't know how the libertarians feel about capitalism. We'll find out. But Hans's Ace Hardware, they're down on Warren Avenue in good old Dearborn. They have an October Best Buy, and it's a 32-gallon trash can. That's right, Ace for $7.49. Somebody said garbage. How did they? What was that quote? Garbage is only a resource misplaced. Something like that. Oh, a resource in the wrong place. Think about that. Anyway, Ace's Hardware. I'm going to stop for just a minute. Then we'll be back, and I'll be jumping up and down. Guest today is Mr. Andre Marrou, and he is the Libertarian Party candidate for Vice President of the United States. So we'll be talking to him a little bit about what is libertarian. You know, that's really... They're out there, and we know they're out there breathing. I don't know if they're reproducing yet. They've only been around for, what, about 9 years? 16 years. Well, they could be reproducing. And, you know, enough of them get going, they're like the Mormons. They might surprise us. Anyway, life goes on. And if you're wondering what I've been jumping up and down about, I guess it's the fact that the media and the Democrats did it again on the Bork. They rejected the judge, 58-42. And if ever I saw a media bushwhacking, that was it. Democrats and Regal and Levin, you're going to get yours, because at least this guy is going to remember come the next election. They've had it with your politics. The guy had some brains, and it's all right when you're packing the court. When Roosevelt was packing the court, that was fine. Oh, that was justice. I'm sick of the weirdos running the Democratic Party. I want to hear majority rule. I'm sick and tired of this idea of minority this and minority that. They can all go over to Harvard and go to school there, as far as I'm concerned. You read that article about the folks who are liberated sexually out in Harvard? I think it was an article in the Wall Street Journal. Was it Harvard or Yale, where they had such a high percentage of those folks who believe in different sexualities than some of the rest of us? And by the way, I'm not down on that. They can do whatever they want. But don't shove your lifestyle down on other people. You know, and they've taken over the Democratic Party along with every other minority in the world. I think it's about time we start talking about majority, and we start talking about the obligation we have to our fellow man if we're going to live in a community. Well, that's my opinion. So Democrats, you may think you have a victory with Mr. Bork, that you've got him out there. But there are some of us who are remembering, and it may backfire, folks. And to watch Joseph Biden, that excuse for a senator, do his thing. It's like going up to court and the judge says, I'm going to have a trial, but I think you're guilty before we start. I've made up my mind. Wouldn't last. And there he was. Did you know that he even stole his farewell song from, you remember when he was saying, well, I got caught and I'm not going to play it anymore? You know where he swiped that from? The Grapes of Wrath. There's this whole speech in there, and it was word for word practically. Joseph Biden, one of the 7 dwarfs. As far as I'm concerned, the Democrats are loaded with dwarfs these days. And I'm sorry, but that's how you're coming across. Get your act together. And they're media clones. Well, anyway, you want to disagree, come on the show and you can jump up and down. I want to spend, I don't want to spend some money, I want to make some money. And then I want to get on with my guest, Mr. Andre Marrou, who is in the Libertarian Party. He's the candidate for Vice President of the United States. Well, let's see what the gentleman has to say. I'll be right back. Don't go.
That is indeed French. My grandparents came from France. It makes me about as French as John F. Kennedy was Irish.
We were just talking about, remember those quotes earlier before you came on? I was talking about a quote by Schwarzenberger, the Austrian guy, premier back in the 1800s. And they were talking, he said, Andre Marrou. Is that
Yep.
French?
That is indeed French. My grandparents came from France. It makes me about as French as John F. Kennedy was Irish.
We were just talking about, remember those quotes earlier before you came on? I was talking about a quote by Schwarzenberger, the Austrian guy, premier back in the 1800s. And they were talking, he said, the world will be astonished by the magnitude of the ingratitude
Another advantage
of the Austrians. And that's the way I've always felt about the French. But we'll get over that.
The quote that I like is by Gladstone. He was a British prime minister
Yes,
120 years
sure.
ago. Remember his definition of diplomacy?
No.
Diplomacy is the art of telling a man to go to hell in such a way that he looks forward to the trip.
I love it. That's great. Andre, what do you do in the real world? I mean, you're running for vice president, but what do you do in the real world?
I'm a real estate broker, duly licensed by the states of Nevada and Alaska.
Alaska. That's why the beard, then.
That's one of the beers. You see all this white in it? That's frostbite over the years. is what
Over
that
the
is.
years. What is the Libertarian Party? I really don't know. So there's a guy that calls me up and has you on all the time, or anybody coming through, and there have been fascinating folks that have been coming, but what the hell are you all about? I don't understand what Libertarian is.
Oh, let's make it simple. You ever heard of Thomas Jefferson?
Ah, yeah, sure.
George Washington?
Yeah, sure.
Thomas Paine? Patrick
Yeah,
Henry?
sure.
Benjamin Franklin?
All rabble-rousers.
Samuel Adams?
Yeah.
They were all libertarians.
Were they?
Mhm.
Are you sure?
Yep.
Because the Democrats have captured Jefferson. You know, they take him for his own.
Well, they have strayed away from that, though. They have vastly strayed away from that. There was one founding father who was not a libertarian. That was Alexander Hamilton. Today he might be, let's say, a Republican.
Republican, yeah.
Because he favored a very strong central government and a strong centralized banking system. So if he were alive today, he would not be a libertarian. But the others, judged by what they wrote and what they said, if they were alive today, they'd be libertarian.
Well, why don't we know more about you? I mean, why? I'm confused. Help me out.
I'm glad you asked. One of the reasons is the propaganda and disinformation put out by the two older and temporarily larger parties, the Republicans and Democrats. First of all, they try to keep us off the ballot. They recruit thousands and thousands of signatures just to get our candidates on the ballot.
The boys take care of the boys.
Which is, first of all, something that they don't have to do, and secondly, something that they have never, ever been required to do. For example, can you imagine the governor of Michigan, Blanchard, going out and trying to get 20,000 signatures just to get his name on the ballot? I mean, if it's good for us, why isn't it good for them? If we have to get 20,000 signatures, so should they.
Let them go through that expense, too, and they have more money. They'd get them very easily today because most people associate, America with the Republicans and the Democrats as the two parties. But, historically, there's been a few parties that have come up and kicked some fanny over the years. I'm trying to think of the one...
All of the major parties at one time were minor parties and went back to being minor parties after they elected a president. And then there only two came back. There have been 5 major parties in the U.S.
What were they? The socialists? Weren't there the...
No, there have been 5 parties that have elected presidents.
Wasn't there a farmer one?
Oh, yeah, there's a farmer party. There have been over 100 third parties in the U.S.
So you consider yourself a third party?
Well, that's what other people call us. But we're in the same position now that the Republicans were in about 1854. We're a third party, but in my opinion, we will in the near future become a major party.
Right now you have, 132 people representing school boards and...
No, not that many. I think it's 60 some odd.
60?
But we have had 3 people elected to state legislatures, all in Alaska.
Anybody in the Congress of the United States yet?
Not yet. Not yet. Ron Paul, though, who is running for president on the same ticket with me, was in Congress, though, for 8 years. He was elected 4 times to Congress as a Republican. And he got disgusted, and he quit, and he joined a third party. Now he's running for president. Incidentally, there is a major historical parallel between 1988 and 1860. Abraham Lincoln did exactly the same thing. He was elected to Congress as a member of a major party, the Whigs. He got disgusted with them. He quit. He stayed out. Then he joined a third party that had never, ever elected a president.
And that was the Republican?
That was the Republican Party. And, of course, he got elected president in 1860.
What do you stand for, though? I mean, how are you different?
How are we different?
I mean, I remember reading that you want everybody to have legalized coke or something and free sex. Is it?
No, it's not true. The core concept of the Libertarian Party is that you own your own body. Each person owns his or her body, and they can do with that body what they want so long as they do not utilize force or fraud against anybody else. Now, as an extension of this, you own what your body produces. If you make car bodies, then you own the labor that goes into that.
Right.
If you do television commercials, then you own what goes into that. And nobody has a right to take that away from you.
So that's a form of capitalism you're saying there, right?
I suppose you could say capitalism in the Randian sense, the Ayn Randian sense.
Yeah, right, yeah.
But nobody has a right to take that away from you, whether it's a robber in in a dark alley with a gun, or whether it's the Internal Revenue Service on April 15th.
Oh, yeah. Well, don't even get me started on the IRS. Those babies are too much.
Somebody told me you like the IRS.
They told you wrong. Told you wrong. So you're saying, now see, I like the idea. I do agree that everybody is master of their own ship. It's the only way it can be. I've always maintained that until you like yourself, you can't like anybody else, you know. You got to be at comfort with
I would
yourself. Agree. And it frightens me when I see everybody trying to do everything for everybody else. I had Doug Fraser sat in this chair about 2 hours ago, and I was telling Doug, first of all, I thanked him for all his hard work when I was a Democrat, you know, and then I turned into a Republican when I got a little something in the pocket because I found the Democrats were in there all the time wanting to save everybody, and I like to still take chicken soup to my neighbor when she's sick, you know. I like to do some things myself. So if you're saying you're really not for the government getting into everything.
That's absolutely right. You were talking earlier about minorities and said that you were sick of minorities. In the Libertarian Party, there are no minorities. There are no minorities in the sense that we do not have special minority rights for this and special minority rights for that and special minority rights for this. Everybody's the same.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just human beings, and that's it.
See, and that's the respect I have for a minority.
That's the way it should be. Yeah.
This idea that somebody has written a law and said, you're a minority, therefore we're going to give... Well, hell, I'm a minority. I'm Scottish descent, okay? Yeah, I'm a minority there. I'm a teacher. Not most people aren't teachers. You know, I like to ride a motor. You know, we're all a minority somewhere, but this classifying. See, I'm not against minorities. I'm... That blows my mind. What I am against is somebody saying that your minority is better than my minority, and you get more help. To hell with that noise. I want the individual, and of course that's Jeffersonian, as you were thinking. And
exactly right. We're all members of minorities. You know, I'm a member of several different minorities. Sure. Being French-American descent, my grandparents came from France. That obviously makes me a member of a minority. But the laws that we have, when people ask, well, what about the laws that are discriminatory against women or discriminatory against blacks or against Jews or whatever? What I ask people is think now, who wrote those laws? Who enacted them? Who's been enforcing those laws for decades? And it's the Democrats and Republicans. Certainly not the Libertarians. We would never, ever enact such laws or enforce such laws.
So what you're saying that most of the things that the boys are saying, look what we're doing for you now, were the things that they got us into.
Exactly.
Well, where did I read it? I read it in Insight Magazine, I think, or was it the Detroit News in one of the letters to the editor. Some of the senators were bragging about that they've added people like ombudsmen into their congressional office to help the citizens deal with the government. You know, to deal with the red tape of government
which
rules.
They created.
Yeah, and then this guy wrote the letter and he said, but you've missed the point, babies. You've missed the point completely. The problem is you guys were the fellas that put all that red tape in.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
And, you know, but what can we do? I mean, if I vote for you, am I throwing away a vote? I mean, you don't have a chance.
No. Well, you're throwing away your vote if you vote for one of the two other guys, or women, whoever's going to be nominated by the other two larger parties. Because then you're voting for either Tweedledum or Tweedledummer, as some people like to say, or Tweedledee and Tweedledum, whatever it is. But you're just voting for two types of the same thing. Some people have said, well, how do you compare it to apples and oranges? And the way I compare it to apples and oranges is that the Democrats are the wine sap apples and the Republicans are the pippin apples, and we're oranges. That's the difference. I mean, they're both varieties of the same thing. More government, more statism, more laws, more regulations, more taxes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. More special favors for special interest groups. We are quite different from that, and we propose what the Founding Fathers had in mind. Very limited government, very small government. The government should exist to protect citizens against force or fraud, and that's it. And force, of course, includes not only like local police, it also includes a national defense, but a national defense that does not include $700, $800 coffee makers and $600 toilet seats and $400 screwdrivers, but a real, honest-to-goodness, legitimate, low-cost but very powerful force.
Well, I go along with that. You know, I guess I'm becoming frustrated as a citizen in the country, and I'm sure there are a lot of other folks. We don't have control of the media. I mean, you know, this is I pay for this studio, I have to get the spots, I have to hire the people, you know, and I sometimes think it's a losing battle. And yet, thank God we still can do it. We still can do it in the country. But when I look at, you know, the ability of television to Xerox the opinions of a Ted Koppel or Or who's that rude one with the president? He ought to be kicked in the fanny, too, good and hard. He's a rude
Sam
boy.
Donaldson?
Sam Donaldson. I'm sorry, he's rude. And, you know, whoever elected Sam Donaldson to get the privilege of asking questions of the president, if he'll line up with all the other citizens, and I say, fine, Sam, go to it. But, you know, we've created this other form of government. It's called the media. You know, nobody ever elected any of these guys.
True.
And they're in there. There's the media barons, and you got Gillette moving around. You got this guy who put Archie Bunker on in the American way. He's a liberal. What the heck's his name?
Oh, Norman Lear.
Norman Lear and all that mob. You know, what about it? I mean,
Well,
how are you going to deal with that? They've got you. They're not going to give you a chance.
Well, they have to sooner or later, and they are. They're coming around. There are two trivia I could point out where the media has not given us credit. You're right. One is, who was the first woman ever to get a vote in the Electoral College for vice president? It was not Geraldine Ferraro. Sometimes I read it in the paper. It was Geraldine Ferraro as the first woman to get an electoral vote. That's baloney. It was Tony Nathan, 1972, Libertarian. 12 years before Geraldine Ferraro, she got one vote. You know, Ferraro only got 17, so Ferraro only beat Nathan by one state. Now, the other thing is, in 1980, our national ticket got almost 1 million votes, something like 950,000. That was Ed Clark. That's the best we've done so far. 1976, Eugene McCarthy was running as an independent Democrat. He got 700,000 votes. Far fewer than Ed Clark as a Libertarian got in 1980, but McCarthy got like 10 times the publicity that Clark got. That's a direct result of the media being biased or prejudiced against anything except the two major
Well,
parties.
it's been my experience that my students that do poor in sociology come into the media. And I teach television, you know, and you know what I think of sociologists, as they analyze and reanalyze and determine that everything is society's fault without any of the respect for the individual. Individuals are amazing and unique characters. In my class, they say Gibb gets all the kooks, and I do. I get them from all. I get this kid here, and I get her, and I get they say hair standing up, the suits and the tie, the whole thing. But that's what makes it interesting.
You teach in college?
No, I teach in high school.
Huh.
Yeah, I'll blow you away when you see our studio.
Huh.
And the majority of the money was donated for that studio, by the way. And my kids do very well in the media. They're all over. They're in New York, California, directing and producing, and hopefully some of my, as they call Gibbism, will get off on them. At least that's according to the Gibble, and I don't mean to be sacrilegious on that, but that's what they call it. According to Chairman Gibb, this is what the world should be. I'm tempted to vote for you.
Good, do it. You'll feel better.
You know why?
You'll feel a lot better.
I'm trying to say, yeah, I'm going to throw my vote away, but I want to say something to the establishment. Boys, you're doing something wrong. See, I'm not in love with the Republicans. Everybody thinks I'm a Republican. I vote for Democrats and Republicans. I've never voted for a Libertarian. I did once vote for a Black Panther guy because he was one of my students. And he was off blowing up the world or something, but he was a nice kid, and, I knew him. And
when you talk about throwing your vote away when you vote for something other than the two major parties, consider the people who voted for Lincoln in 1860. Were they throwing their vote away? They elected a member of a third-party president. And if you could go back and interview him, ask them if they thought they were throwing their vote away, they'd say no, because they voted on principle. If you vote on principle, that's the way it should be. You should vote for principle and based upon your own principles. You should not vote for the lesser of two evils, or the evil of two lessers, as it may be. You should vote for principle. You should vote for the person and the platform, not because you want to keep somebody else out of office.
Why don't we hear more about the Libertarians, though? I'm not kidding you. Even after we come off this show, I still don't know enough about you. Why?
Why?
Yeah.
Well, have you thought about asking for information? We certainly have enough
Well, yeah,
available.
but you know what? It's all mimeograph stuff. We live in an age where you sell an automobile or Diet Coke in 30 seconds. What have you done to inform me? See, we want to all be fed, open our mouth and...
Thomas Jefferson said that government is best, which governs least.
So that's one of
Thomas Jefferson, right. That's on my letterhead, on my campaign letterhead. George Washington said government is not reason, it is not eloquence, it is force. Like fire, it is a dangerous servant and a fearful master.
Lay that one on me again.
Okay. Government is not reason, it is not eloquence, it is force. Like fire, it is a dangerous servant and a fearful master.
Okay.
That was George Washington. Okay, and these people were libertarians. If you want to get libertarianism in a nutshell, read the original Constitution and the first 10 amendments, the basic Bill of Rights. And
can
that
read
is
it? Who can read
libertarianism.
it? It's in language. You
We've
know,
got
you
so
have to-
far away from that.
Well, yeah, of course, but who can read it? I've tried it, and you get confused,
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to read. Plus, they didn't write well. They didn't have an IBM typewriter. What's wrong with them? I mean, the government has thousands. You'd think they'd put it out so we could understand it. But I agree with you. But how do you do that? Until you get the Barbara Wawas and, all these people to start yapping around that.
We're working our way up.
Are you really?
Oh, sure. I got elected, and 2 people were elected before me to the Alaska legislature. There was a guy elected this year in Colorado, the first Libertarian ever elected in Colorado, to the Denver Board of Elections, Doug Anderson, and we're working our way up. It's an uphill battle because, as I mentioned earlier, we're fighting the 2 major parties. They're scared of us. They're doing everything they can to keep us off the ballot.
Because you could take a vote. Yeah, if you can get enough of a swing, you could have some power, like they do in some European countries. I just wonder how many of the kids have ever heard of the Libertarians. We have a lot of young people working here. One has. Well, you're University, Michigan, or community college? Okay. Well, that's good.
More and more people are. I spoke to a high school in Las Vegas about 3 weeks ago, and I'll be speaking in more high schools. I'll be speaking at more college campuses, and people are learning about us. I mean, that's the way you spread the word. We will be on television more and more, and next year certainly we'll be running some national television ads. Oh, sure. We did that in 1980 when we had some money, and we're going to be doing it next year, too.
Well, Mr. Andre, pronounce it.
Marrou.
Marrou. Did I say it right?
That's right, Andre Marrou.
Good luck in your quest. I really appreciate you coming by. This is small potatoes for a guy
it's my
that's
pleasure. I
making-
like
making a
Michigan.
shot.
Every time I come here, I really like Michigan.
We've got some good things going. But I like the fact that in our country, guys like you can stand up and be counted. And don't be surprised. I may vote Libertarian. Who knows? Russ Gibb, I'll be back right after these announcements. And I think I said that right. Libertarians in One Lesson. There's a little magazine. And if you have a phone number, what's the number? 334 4449. 334 4449. Call that number and they'll send you out information. How about that? Thank you for being my guest. Hey, for those who took time to view the show today, thank you. For those who took time to drop me a card or a letter, thank you. But most of all, I'd like to thank you for just being you. Russ Gibb, learning about libertarianism.